Chapter 4473. Iwan bit her lip. I don't want to take the medicine. Chinamo looked at her and said slowly, Then you want me to feed you? His voice was faint, but it was very threatening. Iwan recalled a time when she didn't want to take the medicine when she was in her teens, and he fed her the medicine. At that time, she was with him. When he did that, Iwan widened her eyes and was at a loss. That was also the first time he kissed her so deeply. Iwan's face was a little red because she thought of the past. Chinamo looked at her and put the medicine in her palm. Eat it or else. I actually prefer another way. She knew that he preferred another way, so she lowered her head and ate the medicine. Chinamo looked at her silently. After she was done with her medicine, he fed her breakfast. Iwan wasn't willing. He was a little forceful, and there was a hint of threat in his tone. Iwan could only lean against the headboard and eat breakfast. After that, she wanted to lie down again, saying that she was a little dizzy. Chinamo reached out and touched her forehead. Thank goodness it's not hot. Let's sleep for a while. If you wake up before noon, we'll go back. If not, we'll eat here and go back at night. As he said that, he looked outside. It's a little cold outside now. My mom took Iwan back, so don't worry. Is Iwan in the Chio garden? Iwan hugged herself in the blanket and murmured. Chinamo sat on the headboard and said, Yes. She nodded and leaned against the pillow quietly. After a while, she looked around for a long time before leaning against the pillow again. This place is not bad. Let's stay here for a day. This villa was decorated in the American style. She liked it very much. It was also quiet and no one would disturb her. She just happened to feel dizzy and wanted to rest more. She didn't want to move at all. With regard to her request, Chinamo was surprised. After a long time, he came back to his senses and kissed her. Do you really want to stay here for a day? I want to sleep. Iwan closed her eyes. Chinamo, don't disturb me. As she said this, one of her fair hands pressed flat against the side of the pillow, and her long eyelashes gently closed. That quiet and beautiful scene made Chinamo reluctant to look away, and he kept staring at it. Iwan lay there quietly. She soon fell asleep because she had a cold. Chinamo originally wanted to go to the study to deal with some affairs. After all, it was the end of the year, and there were some things that needed to be wrapped up. However, she looked like a little angel when she slept, and he still couldn't bear to leave. In the end, he took his notebook and looked at her sleeping face while he worked. It was a quiet morning, and the winter sun shone into the master bedroom. The room was as warm as spring. Chinamo glanced at Iwan from time to time as he worked. Looking at her face, he could not help but smile. When she woke up, it was already 1 in the afternoon. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she felt was hunger and sweat. Iwan sat up and saw that Chinamo was sitting on the sofa opposite her, working. He was looking down, and when he heard her voice, he immediately looked up. You're awake. He put down a notebook in his hand, walked over, and naturally kissed her. His voice was a little hoarse. Get up and take a shower first. I'll go downstairs to make something to eat. Iwan was still looking at him. Chinamo reached out and touched her forehead. It was cold. She should be sweating. He asked again, Do you want me to carry you? No, I still have this little strength. Iwan's voice was a little soft. Chinamo smiled and reached out to touch her hair gently. Chapter 4474. He was very gentle, and so was his gaze. Iwan couldn't take it anymore. She bit her lip and turned her face away. I'm going to take a shower. Chinamo smiled. He lifted the blanket for her and carried her to the bathroom. Iwan almost screamed, Chinamo, I'll carry you. I'll run some hot water for you to soak for a while. He murmured gently and carried her in. He placed her on the edge of the bathtub and turned the water on for her. He was taking care of her as if he was taking care of little Iwan. Iwan wasn't used to it, but she had to get used to it because he was so overbearing. Fortunately, he didn't do anything when the water was full. He let her soak herself and left gracefully. However, he told her not to soak for too long. After Chinamo left, Iwan soaked in the bathtub alone. It was warm and comfortable. She didn't want to get up, but she knew that she couldn't soak for too long in her weak body. Thus, she got up after about 15 minutes. She put on a thick bathrobe, dried her hair, and put on skincare products in front of the vanity. He was very nice and considerate to her. Even in such a place where they didn't live, There were brands that she often used. Huan sat on the chair and stared at her pale, fragile face in the mirror. Other than being sick, she knew that the luxurious skincare products had made her pale again. Such a pampered life was actually quite good if she could relax. Chinamo was very nice to her and accommodated her. But she just felt that something was missing. Moreover, some things had happened. It wouldn't be as if nothing had happened just because the wound had healed. She didn't know how long it would take for her to recover. But she thought that the reason why she was with Chinamo was definitely not because of his threats. That wasn't her personality, but she knew it in her heart. She yearned for such gentleness. At least now, she was a little tired and didn't want to move. Thus, she stayed by his side and enjoyed his care. She didn't even reject his approach. Perhaps it was because everyone had their weakest moments. Iwan thought about it quietly. If it were someone else, they would probably wake up from their dreams with such wealth and the love of a husband. However, Huan knew that there was a price to pay for all this love and love. Freedom was the price. While Huan was thinking, another person appeared in the mirror. It was Chin Mo. He stood behind her with both hands on the back of the chair and leaned towards her. He gently sniffed and whispered, "Smells good." Huan bit her lower lip. "Rose, it smells good. I'll change the smell in the apartment to this." His voice was very charming. It was a tone used to talk to a lover, gentle and somewhat domineering. Huan had to admit that he was indeed a very charming man, but since she had grown up with him, she might not be so easily captivated. Occasionally, she would be a little dazed by his mature charm. Just like now, she pursed her lips. "Didn't you say we were going for lunch? Shall we go downstairs?" Chinamo smiled. He didn't make things difficult for her, nor did he do anything out of line. He just walked in front of her. Huan thought it was a random meal, but when she went downstairs, she found out that he had hired a Michelin chef to make it. The lunch was exquisite, and the atmosphere was just right for the two of them. Chinamo pulled out the chair for Huan and sat down after she sat down. Chapter 4475. Huan thought that it was a random meal, but when she went downstairs, she found out that he had hired a Michelin chef. The lunch was exquisite, and the atmosphere was just right for the two of them. Chinamo pulled out the chair for Huan and sat down after she sat down. In the exquisitely decorated living room, Michelin music was playing, and it was very relaxing. Chinamo did not talk about personal matters or company matters, and only mentioned some interesting things about his study abroad. When he deliberately exuded his masculine charm, he would be really charming. Huan was a little nervous at first, but she relaxed after a while. After the meal, she was in a much better mood, and even her cold seemed to be much better. She also found Chin Mo more pleasing to the eye, except for the fact that he made her take medicine at the end. Huan looked at the medicine in his hand and refused to take it. "I've recovered from my cold." At this time, she was sitting in the sunroom on the second floor, comfortably basking in the sun on the sofa. It was supposed to be very comfortable, but he actually made her take medicine. Huan refused to take it, and as she spoke, she buried her face in the back of the sofa. Chinamo looked at her. "You have to take medicine for at least 2 days for a cold. Huan, you're not in good health." "I'm getting calluses from those words." Huan couldn't take it anymore, and she covered her ears and pretended to be dead. Chinamo was angry and amused at the same time, and he reached out to pull her ears. "Why are you so shameless?" "I just don't want to take medicine. It's very bitter." Huan still pretended to be dead, and she looked at him again. "Chinamo, you take it for me." After saying that, she seemed to have remembered something and stopped talking. Chin Mo's expression suddenly became dangerous, but he quickly changed his tone and expression into a very gentle one. "I don't have a cold. Why should I take medicine?" As he said that, he reached out to grab her slender arm. "Huan, I know you remember, don't pretend to be dead." Huan was extremely afraid of him, and she bit her lip. "I'll be fine after I take the medicine." At this time, she was just like that high school girl, and he couldn't help himself. Chinamo pulled her over and put her in his arms carefully. Then he lowered his head and whispered to her, "Don't run around in the future. How good you are now." He couldn't help but reach out and gently touch her face. It was soft everywhere, just like when she was in her 20s. Chinamo suddenly felt that he was old, and Huan was still a high school girl. He had to admit that he preferred her this way. Huan bit her lip. Chinamo, he continued, I'll feed you medicine, okay? Huan wanted to reject him. Firstly, she was afraid of him, and secondly, she was afraid of the medicine. She was extremely afraid of these two things. However, now that these two things were right in front of her, she was not only afraid but also expectant. Chinmo's eyes were as black as ink, and there was a hint of laughter in his voice. I heard that love is a chemical reaction. What do you think, Huan? I don't know. She protested weakly, and her body moved back uncomfortably, but she had no way to escape. In the end, he gently held her in his arms and fed her the medicine. He fed her carefully. Later, Huan thought that the medicine didn't seem so bitter. Later in the afternoon, Chinamo taught her French, Italian, and about 7 or 8 languages. Every time he taught her a language, he would teach her various kissing techniques. For the whole afternoon, Huan was taught by words and deeds, and she didn't know whether she or Chinamo took the medicine, but no one cared. They only knew. Chapter 4476. That night, they still spent the night in this villa. At 8 or 9 o'clock, it started snowing again. Huan ran to the floor-to-ceiling window and pressed her hand against the glass. Chinamo, it's snowing again. Chinamo walked over. The gray sweater he was wearing was especially comfortable and beautiful. He hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. Have you made a wish? I'll only make a wish if there's a shooting star. Huan tilted her head and looked at him uncomfortably. Chinamo chuckled and tightened his arms, hugging her small body in his arms. Make a wish to me. What if your wish comes true? Huan looked outside again and then said in a low voice, 2 billion yuan in the box office. It shouldn't be difficult. Chinamo murmured and then kissed her. After a light kiss, he looked outside with her. What other wishes do you have? Huan lowered her eyes. I want to continue being a director. Chinamo didn't say anything. He just reached out and gently stroked her hair. So she knew that she was rejected or not allowed. Love was equal, but this time, their marriage wasn't equal. She had to listen to Chinamo. Everything. Huan lowered her eyes. Her eyes were a little sore and bitter, and she didn't look up for a long time. After a long time, when the sourness spread to her nose, she said in a low voice, Chinamo, do you want me to stay at home forever? Do you want me to feel like I'm trapped in a cage forever? My love is a cage? Chinamo didn't get angry. He just lowered his head and kissed her. Huan suddenly didn't know what to say. After a long time, she sighed. Let's watch the snow. Probably because it was too beautiful here. Chinamo and Huan stayed for another day. They only returned to the original villa the next afternoon. On their way back, they picked up Huan. Perhaps because it was so wonderful here, Chinamo and Huan stayed another day and returned to the original villa the next afternoon. On their way back, they picked up Huan. The interior of the villa had already been decorated. It was as if Q had changed his skin. Little Huan was wearing a checkered coat, and her hair was cut short. She looked like she was of mixed blood, especially her skin, which was very, very fair. Chinamo carried Xiao Huan into the house and put her down as soon as he entered. Then he looked at Huan and said, Kids all like this. I like it too. Huan smiled and hugged his arm. Chinamo lowered his gaze and looked at her hand that was hugging him. Although it was only for a while, it was a big kiss. In all the years that he and Huan had been together, it was rare for them to do something like this. Chinamo had an indescribable feeling in his heart. Huan wanted to move her hand away, but he grabbed her and said in a low voice, Your hand is so cold. Put it in my pocket. With that said, he put Huan's hand into his pocket. Huan looked at him. He smiled and brought her upstairs. Huan thought he was going to the bedroom again. She bit her lip. Chinamo. She felt that she was too indulgent. Chinamo looked at her. What's wrong? Huan didn't say a word. Her face was tense. Chinamo laughed. You thought I wanted to... With that said, he dragged her into the study. The door closed, and Huan was pressed against the door. She bit her lip. Chinamo, this is the study. A smile appeared on his handsome face. I thought I wanted to do something to you. I just wanted to give you some lucky money. Chapter 4477. Iwan looked at him. Do I have red packets too? Chinamo smiled. Of course. With that said, he brought her to the bookcase and opened his safe. There was a large amount of cash and a box inside. Chinamo took a look and took it out for Iwan. This is for you. Iwan looked at him and opened it. Inside was a diamond ring. It was a pink diamond, about 3 to 4 carats. It was worth at least a few $100 million. Iwan looked at Chinamo. As he took something else, he said, You can wear it now. You can try it on. Iwan looked at Chinamo, then took it out and put it on. Indeed, she was thinner and paler now. She looked beautiful when she wore it. It was just that it wasn't convenient for her to work. She was suitable to be Mrs. Chin. Iwan was stunned. Chinamo had already taken out a few documents in a black envelope. He walked to the desk and turned to ask Iwan to come over. Iwan was still looking at the pink diamond. It was beautiful, and she almost liked it. Chinamo looked at her cute, dazed expression. He couldn't help but knock her on her head. What's wrong? Are you stupid? Iwan snapped out of her trance and wanted to take the ring off. She said in a low voice, Isn't this too expensive? Chinamo smiled faintly. It's not expensive on Mrs. Chin's hand. You can wear it no matter how expensive it is. Iwan didn't take it off again. She followed him there. Chinamo pushed the document in front of her. This is 5% of King Entertainment's shares. Iwan was stunned. She knew that King Entertainment's shares were never divided. Chin Shun and Chin Mu did have 10%, but that was directly allocated by Chin Anlin. Chinamo, as the CEO of King Entertainment, had 40%, which was considered an absolute controlling stake. Usually, he wouldn't touch it, but now he was giving her 5%. Iwan couldn't help but think about it. She said softly, Is this a condition? A condition that I won't be a director in the future? Actually, it was a very generous condition. Just this 5% alone was worth at least $100 million. Chin Mo sighed. This is the benefit of being Mrs. Chin. He reached out and pulled her onto his lap. His voice became even lower. Iwan, this is the stable life I want to give you. Then he rested his chin on her shoulder and held her hand with one hand. His voice became even lower. Filming is very tiring. My heart aches too. Besides, I'm almost 40. Spend more time with me, okay? Iwan wanted to turn around in his arms, but he didn't let her. He wanted to kiss her with a smile in his voice. Iwan bit her lip. Chinamo, don't do that. I don't fall for it. Still smiling, he held her hand and signed away with her. Iwan was speechless. Chinamo closed the file as if nothing had happened and handed the black envelope to Iwan. This is my secondary card. Keep it. Swipe it from here when you want to spend money. The password is your birthday. Iwan still wanted to say something, but Chinamo lowered his head and pinched her cheek. New Year's money. At this time, the clock rang 7 times. It was actually 7 in the evening. Chinamo kissed her. Happy New Year, Mrs. Chin. He added, This is a promise. Iwan gently licked her lips. Let Iwan stay by my side. She mustered up her courage to say it. Then she looked at him. At this time, Iwan really felt that if he was willing to let Iwan stay, she would stay. Even if she had to be Mrs. Chin, even if she didn't have to film, she was willing. Chapter 4478. Chinamo lowered his head while Iwan sat on his lap, looking up at him nervously and helplessly. Of course, he could see Iwan's uneasiness and pleading. Chinamo gently touched her little face with his fingers and sighed softly. Do you really want to keep her by your side? Iwan said yes, and then looked at him again. Chinamo sighed again. Iwan, this is her mission and she has to bear the responsibility. Iwan bit her lip, and the color of her lips almost became very pale. After a long time, she said that she understood. Are you angry? Chinamo whispered. Iwan, I just want to tell you that Iwan is not as fragile as you think. Didn't you run away abroad when you were in your early 20s? You were alone. Iwan lowered her eyes. But I was very happy before I was in my teens. I didn't have so many responsibilities. You were very happy before you were in your teens? Chinamo reached out to hold her face and lowered his voice. Really, Iwan? Did you feel very happy? She had been with Qin Mo before she was in her teens, and they had been together most of the time. Huan pursed her lips and looked at him. You're being picky with me again. No. He smiled. It's because I care. Huan immediately stopped talking. Then she wanted to get up, but Qin Mo pressed her down and didn't let her get up. Aren't we going to eat? The smell of food wafted in the air. Qin Mo's chin rested on her hair, and his voice was very gentle. Don't move. I just want to hold you for a while. She was swept into his warm arms. The huge pink diamond on her fingertip was dazzling, and she was still holding the New Year's money he gave her. Huan almost indulged in it. Huan pushed the door open and came in. Then she screamed and covered her eyes shyly. The little fellow ran out again, and Huan didn't even have time to call her. The back view of the little plaid jacket looked like a boy. Huan sighed. Who took her to get a haircut? Qin Mo laughed and kissed her. It's Qin Shen's personal stylist, Tony. Huan looked at him. Don't you care about Qin Mo? I thought you liked girls like Qin Mu. She's Huan. No matter what, she's still Huan. It's fine as long as she's happy, and she can always adjust it, right? Huan looked down. What about your feelings? Can feelings be controlled? She had been through that. She knew that once she was involved with certain men, she would not be able to escape. Just like her and Qin Mo, just like Qin Mu and Zhou Chongwang, just like Cher and Yi Mu Yun. Wen Yuan, by Xue Li, they were all examples. Yi Xiangnan was Yi Mubai's son. None of the men in the Yi family were easy to deal with, from the top to the bottom. Huan was not so stupid as to think that Huan could return them if she grew up and didn't like them. Sometimes, it was beyond her control. She wanted to exchange herself for Huan, but Qin Mo obviously refused. He wanted Huan, but he also had his own plans for Huan. What are you thinking about? Qin Mo whispered. Huan came back to reality. Nothing. Let's eat. I'm hungry. Qin Mo looked at her carefully and suddenly smiled. You seem to have put on a little weight. You have some flesh. He slept with her every night, so he naturally knew. Although she had caught a cold in the past 2 days, she was recovering well. He almost took care of her like a daughter. Huan glanced at him and turned her head away. She seemed to be a little sentimental. Qin Mo smiled and couldn't help kissing her again. Okay, let's go downstairs for dinner. New wife number 1. Honey, I'm addicted to spoiling. Chapter 4479. Only the 3 of them had this meal. Huan was very happy. She was not sad about leaving home in a few days. Instead, she looked happy. Although she wanted to act like a little boy, she was unwilling to give up the pink bathtub. She soaked in it every night. Huan was already very good at taking care of her, but she was very fragile now. Qin Mo could not bear to let her do it, so he took care of Huan himself. After taking care of the little girl and giving her money, he went back to the study to look for Huan. He allowed her to stay up late on Lunar New Year's Eve. Besides, he wanted to keep her company. They had known each other for many years, but other than the first few years, they were not so good. Later on, she fell in love with Rong Yu, and the quality of their marriage was terrible. It seemed that they had not gotten along well for so many years. Huan was sitting on the sofa, watching a movie with a laptop in her hand. Qin Mo walked over and sat beside her, naturally holding her in his arms. Why don't you watch in the living room? Won't your neck hurt like this? Don't bother, let me down. Huan struggled for a moment, then looked at him. You're so old, and you're always being intimate. Don't you find it annoying? Qin Mo's gaze was a little curious. Mrs. Qin, do you think I'm old? He grabbed her and looked like he was going to do it on the spot. Huan bit her lip and begged for mercy. Qin Mo, can you let me watch it properly? He took the laptop from her hand and studied it for a while. He smiled faintly. Watch this. At this moment, there was a scene of 2 women, one older and the other younger, and they were both very pretty. Qin Mo stared at the scene for a few seconds. Then his expression became a little incredulous. Huan, watch this. Huan blushed and wanted to snatch the laptop from his hand, but Qin Mo did not let her. He took the laptop for himself and watched the scene from beginning to end. It was a pity that it was just a scene. Then the story ended. Qin Mo turned off the laptop. Huan snatched it over and said, I want to watch something else. It's Chinese New Year's Eve, And you're going to ignore me like this? Chin Mo murmured. Iwan bit her lip. After a while, she said in a low voice, Are we going to set off fireworks? She knew that there was still some in the trunk. Chin Mo kissed her cheek. Think of something else. Huan noticed that there was something wrong with his gaze and shrank toward the other end of the sofa. No, you don't dare to think about it, or you don't want to think about it. He leaned in and kissed her. Mrs. Chin, don't be lazy. Huan rested her chin on the back of the sofa. After a while, she whispered, I'm a little tired. Chin Mo put down his hand on her shoulder and smiled. Let's watch TV together. With that, he pulled her into the living room to play the Spring Festival Gala. Huan was lost for words. Chin Mo. Many of them are celebrities from King Entertainment. Isn't it normal to take a look? Chin Mo chuckled. Huan sat with him and said casually, I think Su Ilio is on the Spring Festival Gala too. She's on the same stage as two male idols. You seem to have a lot of opinions about her. Chin Mo pulled her over and pressed her into his arms to warm her up. The heater never seemed to work on her. Her little hands were still cold. Huan put her hands directly into his sweater. It was warm. Chin Mo turned his head and looked at her quietly. Huan snorted. What opinions can I have? She's your ex-girlfriend. Chapter 4480. She had initially wanted to make a joke, but in the end, she started to mind it and felt a little uncomfortable. Her voice was also not right. After that, she didn't say anything and just sat there quietly to watch the show. Chin Mo felt the change in her mood. He stared at her for a while and said in a relaxed tone, She's not my ex-girlfriend. I only have one girlfriend, the one with a bad temper and who's hard to deal with. Huan was touched. She didn't want to talk to him, but she still leaned on him. It was a small compromise. But on this New Year's Day, Chin Mo didn't want her to be unhappy, so he turned off the TV. I'm not watching anymore. Huan was speechless. She stared at him. What do you want? Chin Mo said calmly. A New Year's gift, Mrs. Chin. I gave you lucky money. Huan stared at him for a long time and said in a low voice, I didn't prepare it. You're not sincere. He bit her cheek. But you can think about what you can give me, tangible or intangible. Chin Mo didn't seem to care. You're so shameless. Huan couldn't stand it anymore. Chin Mo laughed. Men can be prideful outside, but they don't need it at home. He leaned over. His posture was really dangerous. Huan, you haven't told me yet. Tell me what? Huan pretended to be stupid. She took a book and pretended to read it. Chin Mo didn't allow her to escape. He pinched her chin with one hand. Say you love me, or call me husband. Choose one. Huan wanted to put the book on his head, but she didn't dare. She just snorted. Boring and childish. Then she moved away from Chin Mo so that she might escape. He still pinched her chin. Or you'd rather do something else. Of course, there was a deep meaning to it. How could Huan be willing? She stared at him. Then I'll call you husband. But how could she not do it when she was facing him? She stared at him for a long time. Then, Chin Mo sighed and kissed her. He kissed her again, and at last she cried out, trembling. This evening was more satisfying than he had expected, even if it was just to be with her. After that, Huan went back to watching horror movies on television. She did not care about the Spring Festival Gala or Su Ilio. Chin Mo was reading a business magazine by the side. Later on, Huan had a pillow in her hand. Finally, Huan buried her head in his chest and read the magazine. She would occasionally gasp, and at other times, she would hug his waist and scream softly. From time to time, Chin Mo would look at her and chuckle. Occasionally, he would reach out and touch her fluffy hair. By the time they finished watching the movie, it was already 11:30 at night. Huan yawned and said that she was going to bed. Chin Mo held her back. Spend the New Year with me. Huan fell onto the sofa again, unable to hide her sleepiness. I'm sleepy. I'll be done in a while. Chin Mo picked her up and walked to the balcony. Fortunately, there was a heater there, but he still thoughtfully put a coat on her. They stood together on the balcony, looking outside. The night sky was cold and sweet. While Huan leaned on his shoulder and was about to fall asleep, the clock rang. It was the ancient 12. Happy New Year, Mrs. Chin. Chin Mo kissed Huan's hair. Then, a champagne-colored rose rose in the night sky. It was fireworks. There will be an update tomorrow. Chapter 4481. Hee-Hwan tilted her head and looked at Chin Emo. Chin Emo smiled. Do you like it? A custom-made, Mrs. Chin. There might be 32 roses. I don't need you to remind me of my age. Hee-Hwan bit her lower lip and turned her head to look at another champagne rose rising. Any woman would love this. Even Hee-Hwan couldn't help but let out a gasp of surprise. After a while, she asked him, How did you make this? Chin Emo smiled. You want to know? Hee-Hwan tilted her head and looked at him. Forget it if you don't want to tell me. After saying that, she went to look at the fireworks again. Although she didn't want to admit it, she was really counting to 1,234. She was looking forward to it, but she didn't want all 32 roses to go up, as if everything would be over once they went up. Chin Emo hugged her from behind and rested his good-looking chin on her shoulder. He said with a smile, From now on, I'll remind you every New Year's Eve, okay? No way, Hee-Hwan said without hesitation. Chin Emo laughed. Is it because I don't want to remind you how old you are? Or you don't want to spend New Year's Eve with me, huh? Hee-Hwan bit her lip and still looked at the rising fireworks. After a long time, she said in a low voice, I don't want to answer. Chin Emo just smiled and didn't force her. They hugged each other quietly and looked at the dazzling fireworks in the night. Finally, all 32 roses went up, and the sound of police sirens came from outside. Hee-Nan said helplessly, Mr. Chin, the price seems to be a bit high. Chin Emo looked at the police car outside the villa and patted her. Wait for me here. I'll come up in a while. He had to deal with this kind of thing personally. The servants at home would probably tell the truth. As he said that, he turned around and went downstairs. Hee-Hwan saw him walking out of the villa and talking to the police outside. He seemed to be having a very pleasant conversation. After about 5 minutes, the police car left. Chin Emo was about to come back. Before he came up, he looked upstairs. Hee-Hwan didn't want him to think that she was waiting for him, so she went straight to the master bedroom and lay down, pretending to be asleep. She took out her phone and scrolled through something. Chin Emo couldn't find her on the balcony. When he returned to the bedroom, he saw Hee-Hwan leaning against the headboard and playing with her phone. He walked over and patted her lightly. Lazy bum, go take a shower. Hee-Hwan was still scrubbing. Her voice was as soft as a little lamb's. I don't plan to do anything anyway. I don't want to wash. Chin Emo lowered his head and kissed her. His voice was hoarse. What do you want me to do, huh? Of course not. Go wash yourself. She reached out and pushed him. The pink diamond in her hand was sparkling. Chin Emo grabbed her hand and nibbled it. Then he let her go to the bathroom with a chuckle. Hee-Hwan was still scrolling through Weibo out of boredom. However, her gaze soon froze. At the beginning of the new year, the trending topics were suffocating. At least, it made Hee-Hwan feel suffocated. Ranked 8th was hashtag President Chin's remarriage. It was nothing at first. It was just photos of her and Chin Mo's daily life. However, at the end of the article, it was written that President Chin had let bygones be bygones and accepted director He because of her talent. He didn't care about the fact that she couldn't have another child. He had already sent his only daughter to a boarding school to be trained as his heir. Hee-Hwan had also been in the entertainment industry for many years. She could tell at a glance that this was written by a bribed gunman, and the person behind it knew a lot. Chapter 4482. Her assistant wasn't good at other things. She was a little silly, but she was very good at writing. Hee-Hwan only said a few words. However, while she was talking, Chin Emo was already done with his shower. He walked out of the bathroom in his bathrobe and wiped the water droplets off his black hair with a towel. Naturally, he heard what Hee-Hwan said. Hee-Hwan looked up. She knew that he heard her, but she lowered her eyes and continued to talk. Chin Emo looked at her and said. After he hung up the phone, Chin Emo tossed the towel in his hand onto the couch and sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and stroked her hair. What did Sue Elio do to offend you? Why did you treat her like this? He changed the topic. I know you don't like to meddle in other people's business. Hee-Hwan waved her phone. The fact that I can't have children is on the news. Who do you think did it? Most people wouldn't know about it. Women who didn't have any ulterior motives towards Chin Mo wouldn't know that it was Su Ilio. Chin Mo said in a low voice, "You can do whatever you want. Also, I'll warn her." Although the Su family and the Chin family had a good relationship, it didn't mean that Chin Mo was willing to let his wife be trampled on and hurt in private. Even though it was the new year and it was the middle of the night, Su Ilio was frozen with just one phone call from President Chin. Even though she was still backstage at the Spring Festival Gala in B City, her assistant had already gotten someone to write a few press releases. They talked about how she was a rare and beautiful female star, how she had a good family background, how she was suitable for rich families, and so on. However, after a call from Chin Mo, Su Ilio's career was completely frozen. Her agent didn't sleep in the middle of the night, trying to find out why. However, when the call reached Chin Mo, it was stopped. No one dared to give President Chin's personal number to a small agent. Su Ilio had Chin Mo's number, but when she called him, she was blacklisted by Chin Mo. An hour later, an article about Su Ilio's dream of being rich replaced the previous one on the hot search list. It was the hardcore one, which surpassed all the other articles on the Spring Festival Gala. It stayed at the top of the hot search list for the whole day. Since KG Entertainment didn't do anything, Su Ilio's agent had a rough idea of what was going on. It could only be President Chin's idea. In other words, Su Ilio's career was over. She would never be popular again. The company had spent a lot of resources on her in the second half of the year. It was a waste. Chin Mo was angry because of her. As for that beauty, it was obvious that it was Mrs. Chin. Su Ilio's agent was a veteran of KG Entertainment and knew that Su Ilio would never marry into the Chin family. She only wanted to create a scandal, and President Chin never took her seriously. Didn't a woman know how a man treated a woman? All right, she's already remarried, and you secretly made such a press release to crush her. All right, it's all over. He Huan's one move will crush you completely, and you won't be able to turn the situation around. The power of the Empress was on full display. Su Ilio's agent gave up on Su Ilio and let her do whatever she wanted. Su Ilio, of course, didn't sleep well that night, so she returned to KG Entertainment, new wife number one. "Honey, I'm addicted to spoiling you." Chapter 4483. Su Ilio naturally didn't sleep well that night. She returned to King Entertainment and frantically tried to find Yi Huan and Chin Mo. In the end, she had to ask Yi Liangxiu early in the morning to find out where they were. Yi Liangxiu had heard the whole story from her confidant. She didn't say much and only said, "Let's leave it up to Chin Mo and Yi Huan." She paused for a moment before saying, "Miss Su, you are a woman too. You did some things inappropriately." This Miss Su clearly showed Yi Liangxiu's attitude. That was true. Putting her personal feelings aside, Su Ilio had gone overboard this time. She was about to hang up. There was nothing more to say. Su Ilio hurriedly called out Annie. Yi Liangxiu gave her time to say one last sentence. Su Ilio hesitated for a moment before asking carefully, "Director, he can't give birth. Do you and Uncle mind?" Yi Liangxiu's voice was indifferent. "It's fine as long as Chin Mo likes her. Besides, they already have Yi Huan, so it doesn't really matter whether she gives birth or not. To say the least, it's meaningless. Chin Mo isn't an only child, so he doesn't feel that much pressure." With that, she sighed and hung up the phone. Actually, she used to like Su Ilio quite a bit. She thought she was quite transparent, but in the end, she still couldn't afford to lose. Yi Liangxiu still hung up. Chin Anlin looked at her, and she sighed and told him about it. Chin Anlin didn't say anything, but Yi Liangxiu still couldn't let it go. Yi Huan is a little stubborn, but he wouldn't do something so sinister. I was wrong about him. If Chin Mo really, Chin Anlin silently comforted his wife. On the other side of the phone, Su Ilio was trembling all over. She naturally knew the consequences of Chin Mo's suppression. Not only her, but also her family's business would be affected, just like the He family, so she had to see Chin Mo to beg him. When Su Ilio drove to Chin Mo's villa, she hadn't even removed her makeup. She didn't have the time or energy to care about her appearance. At 8:30 a.m. in the morning, her car arrived at the entrance of the villa. The security guard would not let her in. Su Ilio begged for a long time before he agreed to ask Mr. Qin. Of course, she had to go through the ante home. Fortunately, Qin Mo was already up. He was flipping through a magazine in the living room downstairs, as if he knew she was coming. Hearing the Andy's announcement, Qin Mo closed the magazine and said calmly, "Invite her in." The auntie went to inform him. Su Ilio was a little excited and wanted to drive the car in. The auntie immediately said, "Sir said that you can go in alone. Cars are not allowed in." Su Ilio was stunned. "Why?" The auntie's expression was a little strange. "Because Madam is asleep. Sir is afraid of waking her up, so I can only trouble Miss Su to take a few more steps." Su Ilio's heart was filled with bitterness that she couldn't describe. This was also the most embarrassing time in her life, but she had to grit her teeth and bear with it. Huan had experienced this kind of pain before, but it was actually nothing. She endured the pain and walked into the villa. After entering the entrance, she saw Qin Mo drinking coffee. The sun shone on him, making him look warm and comfortable. Su Ilio hadn't slept the whole night, so she felt cold no matter how warm the place was. She pulled her coat and walked to Qin Mo. President Qin. Qin Mo looked up and looked at her for a while. "You're here so early in the morning to pay New Year's greetings." Chapter 4484. Su Ilio was naturally embarrassed. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "President Qin, it's my fault. I thought you were here to wish me and Huan a Happy New Year. What's wrong with that?" Qin Mo smiled faintly, but it was a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Instead, it made people shiver. Su Ilio's voice was bitter. "It's my fault. President Qin can punish me however you want, but can you let my parents off? They didn't do anything wrong." At this point, she already knew Huan's place in Qin Mo's heart. She didn't dare to think too much, but she was still a little indignant. After she finished speaking, Qin Mo's gaze was still indifferent. After a long time, he smiled and said mildly, "Then tell me what you did wrong." This was undoubtedly very embarrassing. Su Ilio closed her eyes slightly. "I shouldn't have gotten someone to write a press release saying that director, he can't give birth." As she said this, Qin Mo stared straight at her, not missing a single word. Then he said coldly, "Huan is my wife. What does it have to do with anyone else whether she can give birth or not? Does it have anything to do with you?" He rarely treated women so rudely. At most, he would be a little cold, but now he was almost impolite. At this point, he wasn't the CEO of King Entertainment, making things difficult for a subordinate. He was protecting Huan as a husband and standing up for her. That was all. Su Ilio naturally couldn't say a word. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Do you love her that much? Do you really not care?" "Yes, I love her. I love her whether she can give birth or not. It has nothing to do with anyone else." Qin Mo clearly didn't want to talk to her anymore. "I won't do anything to your family. They aren't worth my time. But I'll take back all your resources from King Entertainment. That's all. Now get out." Qin Mo's impoliteness made Su Ilio feel even more embarrassed. She looked up and wanted to say something, but she couldn't because she saw Huan standing quietly at the stairs. Su Ilio wanted to speak, but her throat was dry. In the end, she could only whisper, "I understand, President Qin." She still walked out. After all, she was born into a good family, so she was a little proud. Her back was perfectly straight. Qin Mo could tell from Su Ilio's gaze that Huan had woken up. "Did I wake you up?" He turned sideways. Huan was wearing a nightgown. It was his. It was coffee-colored, and because it was a little too big, it looked a little funny on her. However, it was also a direct blow to Su Ilio, and she couldn't help but leave. Huan slowly walked down and sat beside Qin Mo. She picked up his cup and took a sip of coffee. "It's so bitter. Black coffee. No sugar," he whispered. Then he took it from her hand and called for the maid to pour hot milk. "I don't want to drink milk," Huan said softly, biting her lip. Qin Mo looked at her fair little face and said again, "Nourishing red beans." "Qin Mo, you are so bad." Huan couldn't stand it anymore. Wasn't he childish? He clearly knew that she didn't like it, but he had bullied her since they were teenagers. He still didn't get tired of it. Huan was speechless. Chinamo, today is the new year. Can't you just let me go for a day? Besides, shouldn't we be talking about Suilio? Chapter 4485. Iwan looked at him. Why isn't it important? Because of her, people on Weibo said that I'm a hen that doesn't lay eggs. Let me see who's next. Chinmo's voice carried a hint of a smile. Iwan stared at him. Chinamo reached out and gently stroked her hair. His voice was a little low as he said, "You're not someone who cares so much. Our director, he has always been transparent and doesn't bother about trifles. Why is she so emotional now? Besides, we have Iwan. Marrying me would be considered as laying an egg for the Chin family. You're biased." Iwan was still staring at him. He smiled. "I've always been biased towards you. I'm glad that you finally realized it, Mrs. Chin." Iwan said slowly, "I was going to kill Su Elio." Chinamo held back his laughter and asked in a serious tone, "Mrs. Chin, how are you going to kill her?" He pulled her black hair as he spoke. Iwan stared at him. "Of course I have my own way." Relying on my influence? Don't think that I don't know that you've been merciful to her. You didn't want to hurt your family, huh? Iwan snorted. Chinamo smiled and pulled her into his arms. After a while, he said in a low voice, "Iwan, are you concerned about what's written in the press release? If you want a child, we can adopt one." Iwan immediately asked, "Can I inherit the family business for Iwan?" Chinamo, on the other hand, answered her seriously, "No." "Then don't adopt one." Iwan rejected him directly. She was being unreasonable today, but she was just a little cute. Chinamo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You want a working machine?" Iwan looked at him from head to toe. After a while, she suddenly said, "Then you can exercise every day and work until you're 80. You can wait for the next generation to inherit the family business." Chinamo looked at his wife in disbelief. After a while, he pulled her into his arms and touched her hair with his chin. "Don't you care about me at all?" "Not at all," Iwan said resolutely. From the corner of his eyes, Chinamo saw the auntie coming over with a glass of something. So he smiled and said, "If you really don't feel bad, then I won't feel bad for you either." As he spoke, he took the cup of red beans and took a sip. Very fragrant. Iwan looked at Hong Do with a bitter expression. "I refuse." Chinmo's voice was low. "There's no point in refusing, because I don't feel sorry for you." Iwan wanted to run, but he held her down and fed her. Iwan really didn't want to recall the entire process. The main thing was that Annie was here. If she didn't listen to him, he would personally feed her. After Iwan finished eating, she went upstairs. After a while, Chinamo heard the sound of vomiting coming from upstairs. His heart tightened, and he immediately went upstairs to the bathroom. Iwan had indeed vomited. Chinamo patted her back and said gently, "It's my fault. I won't force you to eat next time." Iwan was in so much pain that his voice was light. "It's too late." She covered her mouth and glared at him. "I'm not eating anymore in the future." At that moment, Chinamo was still taking care of her and had to coax her well. Finally, she wasn't angry anymore. However, after she calmed down, Chinamo still mumbled, "Go to the hospital for a checkup. What if you're pregnant?" Iwan was stunned for a moment before she said firmly, "I just vomited from eating red beans. I won't get pregnant." However, Chinamo was insistent. He was afraid that she might really get pregnant. After all, Shin had said that Iwan's body couldn't handle childbirth, not even pregnancy. Since he cared about her so much, he naturally had to get rid of that little bit of doubt in his heart. Chapter 4486. Chinamo stared at her for a while before whispering, "I'm worried. Let's go to the hospital." Iwan bit her lip and said impatiently, "Chinamo, you're so annoying." She gave him a shove because she was impatient. Chinamo grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. Iwan couldn't escape and looked like she was about to throw a tantrum. "Chinamo, let go of me. I don't want to go to the hospital." He didn't let go and held her in his arms in a strong and masculine manner. Iwan couldn't move and could only stare at him. Chinamo said in a low voice, "Are you going to listen to your brother?" Iwan froze for a moment at the way he addressed her. She recalled that when they were very young, she used to follow behind him and call him Brother Chinamo. Later, he asked her to call him brother and omitted the word Chinamo. She had been calling him brother for several years until her period came. After they stayed in a hotel for one night, Chinamo didn't allow her to call him brother anymore. Sometimes, she also felt that he was quite fickle, changing all the time. He called him brother one moment and Chinamo the next. They were an old couple now, but he still called him brother. Ihuan bit her lower lip gently and said, "I'm not brother." "Then what is it?" There was a hint of a smile in Chinmo's eyes, and his eyes were burning. Ihuan pushed him. "Put me down. It's uncomfortable to hold me like this. I want to vomit again." Chinmo's voice was a little low. "I'll take you to the hospital. Don't refuse." After saying that, he carried her back to the bedroom and sat on the bed. "You want to get her clothes and put them on?" There were 3 layers of clothes, so it was useless for Ihuan to protest. Chinamo also changed his clothes and said calmly, "We'll have breakfast later." Ihuan wanted to say something, but it was useless. He took her downstairs and asked the nanny to take care of Ihuan. The little girl was going to get up soon. When they got into the car, Ihuan tilted her head and looked at Chinamo. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I really just threw up. I'm not pregnant." Besides, Chinamo was fastening his seatbelt when he heard her pause. He turned his head and asked, "What are you talking about?" Ihuan blushed a little. Chinamo revealed a faint smile. "Besides, I have been taking precautions all along, haven't I?" Ihuan's face turned even redder. She bit her lip and glared at him. Chinamo laughed. "Why, are you embarrassed?" Ihuan's face was still very red. He quietly admired it for a while and reached out to touch her face. "You better not be pregnant. Otherwise, it's my fault." As he spoke, his voice became hoarse and gentle. Even Ihuan, who was used to living with him, felt that Chinamo was especially gentle at this moment. But she also knew that while he was gentle now, he could be particularly hateful at critical moments. Ihuan sat up straight. She knew that she couldn't escape, so she said softly, "You drive. Don't look." Chinamo smiled gently and then started the car. When they went to the hospital, it was naturally a mistake. Ihuan just ate red beans, not pregnant. The doctor prescribed some medicine to protect her stomach and scolded Chinamo as he prescribed it. "Don't force her to eat something she doesn't like. She's already married, so there's no need to be so wicked. Don't bully her so much." Even though Chinamo was thick-skinned, he still blushed slightly and said nothing in the end. When they left the hospital, he pulled Ihuan along with him. Chapter 4487. Sitting in the car, he took the medicine and looked at it for a while before putting it down. He looked up and asked her, "Do you still feel uncomfortable?" Ihuan shook her head. "I'm fine." Chinamo rubbed her hair and started the car. The car slowly drove back to the villa. It was already 11 o'clock, and it would be lunchtime soon. Yi Liangxiu had called and asked them to go to the Chiu garden for lunch. Ihuan took the medicine and looked very reluctant. Chinamo poured her a glass of water and looked at her. "You don't want to take the medicine?" Ihuan held the glass of water and looked at the medicine silently. Then she gently rubbed it with her fingers and murmured, "Don't you think I've been taking medicine since we got together? Miscarriage, fever, cold, and now Chinmo's heart ached." He went over and hugged her gently. "It's my fault. I won't force you to take it next time." After a pause, he coaxed her again. "Be a good girl and take the medicine." Ihuan also felt uncomfortable, but she still took the medicine, although it was a little bitter. After she finished, her little face was wrinkled and especially small and fair. Chinamo couldn't help but kiss her again. Ihuan glared at him. She was already like this, and he still didn't behave. Chinamo pinched her little face with one hand and took a stack of snacks with the other hand. "Eat some. It will take at least an hour to eat at my parents' place. There's no sugar for this." Ihuan's mouth was very picky. She was only willing to take a small bite to make sure there was no problem before she was willing to eat a little bit. Every time she was picky, Chinamo would have a feeling that she was hard to raise, even harder than Ihuan. Chinmo's eyes were fixed on her, and there was a touch of affection in his eyes that couldn't be concealed. In fact, he liked her like this, the way she needed him to take care of her. However, he still restrained himself. He just waited for her to eat and drove to the Chiu garden with Yihuan. The atmosphere in the Chiu garden was even more intense. All the children of the Qin family, except Yi Muyun, had returned. Qin Mu and Qin Shun came back with their children. Little Yihuan also had a playmate, but she was the youngest among them, so she was also very pampered. While they were waiting for the meal, Yihuan watched the children play and smiled. Qin Mu rarely interacted with Yihuan, and it was rare for them to get together. However, they often played together when they were young, and their personalities were more compatible. After all, Qin Shin had always been a boy since he was young. Qin Mu handed a cup of hot fruit tea to Yihuan. Second brother asked me to give it to you. Yihuan took it and subconsciously looked in Qin Mo's direction. He was talking to Lan Yu and seemed to be having a good time, while Zhou Chongwang was smiling at the side. The scene of three handsome men together was very pleasing to the eye, and Yihuan also took a second look. Meanwhile, Qin Mo's gaze swept over to them with a meaningful look in his eyes. There was also an inexplicable smile on his face, which was quite meaningful. Yihuan immediately turned her head away, refusing to look at him. Who wanted to look at him? Her awkward look seemed to please him. Qin Mo chuckled and then continued to talk with Lan Yu and Zhou Chongwang about the market. Naturally, he was mature and charming. Qin Mu smiled beside Yihuan. Second sister-in-law, Yu, and second brother seemed to have a good relationship now. Yihuan withdrew her gaze and looked at Qin Mu. Where? Even a blind person can feel it. It was rare for Qin Mu to be so rude. Your adultery can't stop it. Yihuan frowned. Qin Mo and I are legally married. Chapter 4488. She then looked at Qin Mu. There's no adultery like you said. Qin Mu was surprised. Oh, we're legally married. Then she smiled faintly. Yihuan bit her lip. Qin Mu, you become bad. Qin Mu looked very happy. It was obvious that she had been living well all these years. The girl who was the most troublesome in the Qin family was finally happy. It hadn't been easy for her and Zhou Chongwang to get to where they were. What she was most grateful for was having a sister like Qin Shun. Qin Mu looked at Zhou Chongwang with undisguised love in her eyes. Zhou Chongwang probably sensed his wife's gaze and returned a gentle smile. Yihuan looked at them and suddenly had a feeling in her heart. She seemed to have rarely, or perhaps never, looked at Qin Mo so openly. Even when she fell in love with him, she hid it, as if she didn't want to admit it, to herself, to him, and to others. Yihuan's eyes were a little confused. After a long time, she let out a long breath. She seemed to have missed out on a lot. When she looked at Qin Mo again, there was a complicated look in her eyes. It was something that Qin Mo had always wanted but couldn't get. He could see the complicated and clear emotions in her eyes. At this moment, Qin Mo wished he could go back to his villa and be alone with her, forcing her to say all the things in her heart. But now he could only suppress himself and talk to Lan Yu and the others as usual. After a while, he couldn't help but get up and walk to Yihuan. Aren't you cold standing at the door? Let's eat. He then carried her to the dining room, ignoring the others. Yihuan was a little embarrassed. Yihuan, you gonna interfere with kids playing together? Qin Mo smiled and wiped her hands with a warm wipe. Don't forget that you're still a patient. Patients need to be taken care of. When he spoke, his eyes were clearly on her face. Yihuan bit her lip and couldn't look away. She could only look at him. This scene was exactly what Yihuan had described. After a while, Yihuan finally realized that something was wrong. She whispered, "Let go of my hand." Qin Mo smiled faintly and let go of her. However, even a blind man could see their sweet little trick. Naturally, Qin Shin could see it too. She took a fruit into the kitchen and looked at her mother with a smile. Qin Mo and his wife are very close now. Mom, don't worry. I saw a little love in Yihuan's eyes just now. That's really rare. Who do you think is the coldest in our family? Actually, it's Yihuan. She's been stubborn for so many years. Luckily, Qin Mo guarded her with all his might. That's why she's so precious. She's so precious. Yilian Qiu felt gratified, but she also sighed. It's not easy. Yihuan's temper is a little slow. Qin Shin took a bite of the fruit and said, "It's Qin Mo. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't be able to wait for a lifetime." Yihuan is very picky in all aspects. You say like you're not picky. Yi Liangxiu glanced at her daughter and sighed in her heart. If Lan Yu hadn't been there, Qin Shun would still be neither a man nor a woman now. All of Qin Chin's injuries were cured by Lan Yu. Qin Shun was Lan Yu's doctor, and Lan Yu was also Qin Chin's doctor, recommending the urban guru Shi Xinshu. Chapter 4489. The meal was full of joy and excitement. After the meal, the children stayed in the garden while the adults were free to do whatever they wanted. Yihuan was supposed to stay in Qin Mo's room upstairs, but Qin Mo came in with his coat and Yihuan's coat in his hand. As soon as she saw him, she buried her face in the pillow. I don't want to go out. You said I'm a patient. Qin Mo walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and pinched her little face. Mrs. Qin, are you acting like a spoiled child? Yihuan glared at him. I'm not. If not, then get up and go out with me. Qin Mo's voice was low and husky. I know you're not feeling bad now. You ate so much for lunch. He touched her under the quilt. You're like a pig. Get up and walk around to digest the food. Yihuan said a little rascally. Didn't you say I'm too thin and need to gain some weight? I'm lying down. Are you being stubborn? He pinched her face and patted it affectionately. Then he lowered his voice. Take it as keeping me company. It was a pity that he had never been in a relationship at his age. Yihuan bit her lip and looked at him. Qin Mo smiled. It's fine if you don't want to go out. Let's take a nap together. He was about to take off his coat. I'd better go out for a walk, Yihuan said hurriedly and sat up immediately. Qin Mo smiled. Good girl. Yihuan was actually a little angry. He was being unreasonable. She was actually a little conflicted. She felt that she had missed something in the past, but she couldn't forgive him in her heart. These two emotions mixed together, so she was a little hesitant. She didn't know if she should leave him or start anew. She wanted to think about it, but Qin Mo didn't want to give her time to think. Yihuan sat up. Qin Mo helped her put on the coat and put on his lap to tidy her up. Qin Mo, Yihuan said in a low voice, I'm already 32 years old. Can you not carry me so often in the future? Qin Mo looked at her. You don't like it? It's not that I don't like it. I just think it's a little weird. Her voice was soft. Qin Mo laughed. If it's not that you don't like it, then there's no problem. As he spoke, he tidied up his clothes and sat her down by the bed to help her put on her shoes. Yihuan was still not used to it. He was too nice to her. She was uneasy, but he pressed her feet to stop her from moving. His voice was calm. As long as you don't think about running away, you won't let me down. Yihuan shuddered and looked down at him. Qin Mo looked up in her eyes and smiled. Don't leave me, okay? She moved her lips and finally squeezed out a faint smile. Didn't you say you wanted to go shopping? Qin Mo reached out his hand for her to hold, and they went downstairs one after another. Sitting in the car, he looked at her and smiled. What do you want to buy? Jewelry? Yihuan raised her hand. On her fair fingers was the pink diamond that he had given her. I have this. He smiled. Yihuan thought for a moment. I'll buy a few shirts and ties for you. Didn't you say that I don't always choose for you? Qin Mo's eyes became a little deep. After a moment, he smiled. Okay. When he started the car, he asked again, Are you paying? Yihuan waved the secondary card. I brought this. It was still his money. Qin Mo smiled. No matter whose money it was, as long as she was willing to swipe her card in front of others. Just like an ordinary married couple, the husband was in charge of carrying things while the wife swiped her card. Chapter 4490. Just thinking about it made Qin Mo smile. He held the steering wheel with his long fingers and focused on driving. They drove to the largest shopping mall in the city, which was also the place with the most luxury goods in the world. Yihuan would occasionally accompany her mother there. Seeing him bring her here, she bit her lower lip and said, You are so vain. Qin Mo unfastened his seatbelt and raised his eyebrows. What else? Do you think I wear custom-made clothes every day? Yihuan looked at him with a no expression. Qin Mo smiled again, got out of the car, and opened the door for Yihuan. They walked into the shopping mall together and indeed shopped for men's clothing. They were all international, first-tier brands. Given Qin Mo's status and age, he naturally chose low-profile luxury brands. Moreover, he preferred black. In fact, Huan secretly felt that he was very suited for black and always looked good in it, especially his legs, which were very long and straight. After entering a certain brand, Qin Mo glanced at Huan, and she helplessly helped him choose. Mr. Qin's taste was obviously very good, but he insisted that she help him choose. Huan had been a director for a long time and naturally had good taste. She quickly picked out 2 shirts and 2 pairs of trousers for Qin Mo to try. Qin Mo took a look and put his coat in her hands. He tried it on, and it fit well. The sizes Huan took were all right. The shop assistant could tell at a glance that these were 2 big fishes. This gentleman's temperament was really particularly noble. It was as if he could buy all of them here. The shopping guide was wild with joy and took out all kinds of new styles. "Sir, these are our new styles." Qin Mo didn't even look at them. "My wife will help me choose." It wasn't that his attitude was bad. It was just that he was very arrogant. The shopping guide was shocked and didn't dare to be too rash. After a long time, she choked and said, "Okay, sir." Huan glanced at Qin Mo and felt that he had gone too far and was too impolite. Of course, she wouldn't reject Qin Mo's request in front of others. She just picked a black windbreaker for him and gestured at him. "Is it too dark to wear black?" "No." Qin Mo gave it a try. Actually, it was just for show because he would like whatever he chose. Huan looked at him. "If both of you like it, I'll swipe my card." Qin Mo nodded. "Go ahead." Then, he stood beside Mrs. Qin and watched her swipe her credit card. That sense of accomplishment was something that even signing a $10 billion case couldn't compare to. The feeling of being controlled by his wife. When Huan was about to swipe her card, the store manager came over and said in a low voice, "Mrs. Qin, we actually have a women's version of that gentleman's windbreaker, but it's a dress. It's also a dark style. Would you like to have a look?" Huan wanted to ask how he knew that she was Mrs. Qin, but she remembered that Qin Mo was famous and often appeared in magazines. She smiled faintly and was about to reject him when Qin Mo said, "Bring it here and try it." Compared to the other employees, the store manager was naturally more observant. With a closer look, she recognized that this was the handsome and rich President Qin of the entertainment industry. She heard that he had recently remarried. Today, she understood why President Qin didn't want so many beautiful female celebrities and socialites, but chose Huan, his ex-wife. She wasn't an ex-wife. She was more like a young girl. She had a skinny figure with thin calves, and the woolen dress made her look especially small. Chapter 4491. She was skinny and had thin legs. The wool dress made her look especially small. She seemed to be 10 years younger than President Qin. She also had a nice face and looked really pretty. The store manager couldn't wait to take out the black dress. It was a dark Japanese style and looked like a nightgown. Huan frowned. "It's too cold to wear it now. It's 20 degrees. Spring is coming soon. Mrs. Qin, believe me, this dress will look different on you. Our brand doesn't do women's clothing, and this is the only one in B City," the store manager said eagerly. In her heart, however, she silently thought that this dress was more suitable to be worn at home to increase the romance between husband and wife. President Qin would like it. Qin Mo walked to the sofa and waited for Huan. Huan went to try it on. After putting it on, she walked out and looked at it in the mirror. "Qin Mo, isn't it a little short?" Qin Mo looked over. After a while, his voice was slightly hoarse. "It looks good." Huan turned her head and looked at him. Qin Mo's eyes were very clear and bright as he stared at her. She had no idea how this dress would look on her. The black hair and the black silk dress, the wide sleeves of the Japanese ring. The most unbearable part for Qin Mo was the contrast of the hem of the dress, one black and one white. When Huan wore this dress, she would look like hell. There was a small flame burning in Qin Mo's black eyes. It was something that could be called plundering. "Qin Mo, is it not good?" Huan bit her lower lip. "I'll change it." Qin Mo walked over. His tall and slender body walked to her side silently. He reached out and pressed her shoulder. His voice was hoarse. "Buy it. I'll pay with my card." Huan's eyes widened. "Qin Mo, didn't you say you didn't bring your card?" and I can pay by myself. He had already taken out his wallet. It's only right for a man to buy things for a woman. While Juan was still in a daze, the store manager happily took the card and said with a smile, "Although 280,000 yuan for this dress is a little expensive, the important thing is that Mr. Qin likes it." President Qin smiled faintly. Although Juan was used to being rich, she still felt that 280,000 yuan for a dress was too much. Just as she was about to say something, Qin gave her a look, and she stopped talking. At crucial times, she had to give the man face. Was Qin a man who lacked 280,000 yuan? She did not speak, and the store manager took the card and swiped 280,000 yuan. President Qin was quite calm. Juan changed out of her clothes. Other than her clothes, Qin asked someone to send the rest to the villa. Juan knew that he had decided to live in the villa for a long time, but she didn't say anything. She also knew that he wanted to go shopping. It was really the first time he came out, and he wanted to buy. After swiping several clothes for him, Juan looked at him. "I've already swiped 1 million yuan for you. Will the card be maxed out?" Qin Mo's gaze was a little strange. After a while, he chuckled. "Are you thinking too much? This is my secondary card. Even if you want to swipe a private plane, you can." Juan looked at him. Qin paused. "The limit is 300 million yuan. Juan stared at him for a while. After a while, she chuckled. "I suddenly feel that it's worth it. You just realized that, Mrs. Qin." He hugged her waist in the aisle of the mall and leaned over to kiss her. "I hope that my generosity can be rewarded tonight." Chapter 4492. Juan stared at him for a while and chuckled. "I suddenly feel that it's worth it. Mrs. Qin, you just realized that." He hugged her waist in the aisle of the mall and kissed her. "I hope that I can repay you for my generosity tonight." In the crowded aisle of the mall, Juan was half in his arms as he said those shameless words again. Even Juan's face was a little red. She looked at him and stammered, "What is repayment?" "Of course it's a couple's duty," Qin said simply and directly. Juan's face turned even redder. She broke free from him and walked in front of him. Obviously, she was a little irritated. Qin smiled and followed behind her. He held her hand and put it in his palm to warm her up. Her hands had always been cold. Juan wanted to refuse, but she was really a little afraid of the cold. His palm was very warm, so she put her hand in Qin pocket reluctantly. Qin smiled and also put his hand in his pocket, clenching it tightly. Juan wanted to break free, but she gave up. It was warm to be in his pocket with him. Later, Qin helped her pick out clothes. Except for the black dress, he took all the other clothes. He didn't need to try them on. They were all the styles he liked, so Juan wanted to be at ease. After buying about 10 sets, Qin looked at Juan. "Tired?" She nodded. "I want to sit down." Qin looked at his watch. "It's almost 6 o'clock. Let's eat outside. I'll make a call." The Qin family usually had dinner at 8 o'clock. Actually, there was still time, but Qin wanted to spend time alone with Juan. He and Juan rarely had time like this, and he enjoyed it very much. As he held her shoulders, he made the call. After hanging up, he looked at her. "Tonight, Juan will stay in Chiu Garden. Let's go back to the villa, okay?" "Why?" Juan looked at him and asked directly. Qin held her shoulders with both hands and smiled gently. He leaned over and whispered, "Because I want to be alone with you, Mrs. Qin. Are you satisfied with this answer?" Juan tried to shake him off, but she couldn't. She could only look up at him. "We've been married for so long. We've only been married for a few days." He gently pecked her lips. "We're newlyweds. We should still be on our honeymoon, Mrs. Qin." Actually, he really wanted to, because during their first wedding, she called out Rong Yu's name on their wedding night. After that, they didn't have a honeymoon, and it was awkward for a long time. And this time, there was no one else between them. He hoped that he could go out with her. A month might not be realistic, but at least for 8 to 10 days. He thought that he would take Juan out after the premiere of the movie. Now that he mentioned it naturally, Juan was a little surprised. After a long time, she turned her face to the side and sighed softly. "Qin, I still hope that Juan can stay by her side." He had his conditions, and this was probably her condition and bottom line. It wasn't that Qin didn't understand her. It was just that he wasn't willing to do it. She whispered again. Ihuan can go abroad to study at the age of 16. She doesn't need the military management at all. She's so young. She tugged at his sleeve. Even if you have any ideas about the Yi family, it's still feasible. Yi Xiangnan is also in B City. They don't need to be together all the time. They can still grow up together. Chapter 4493. Qin Mo's gaze fell on her face. After a long time, he asked in a low voice, "Do you mind?" "Yes." Yihuan raised her head. Her eyes were filled with pleading. For Yihuan's sake, she lowered her stance, which was rare. Qin Mo looked at her and suddenly smiled. "Beg me." Yihuan was stunned. She hadn't expected such an answer. Qin Mo was still smiling and did not say anything else. He took her to the restaurant on the top floor. It was the most prestigious restaurant in B City. Qin Mo brought Yihuan over, and the manager immediately came forward. "President Qin, this way, please." He then led Qin Mo and Yihuan to the window, where the view was great. Qin Mo pulled out a chair for Yihuan and sat on the other side after she sat down. The waiter brought the menu, and Qin Mo handed it to Yihuan for her to read. Yihuan glanced at him, but she still ordered it herself. She was the one who decided on the main course and dessert. It was strange that she knew his taste buds. After ordering, she looked up. "Qin Mo, what else do you want to eat?" Qin Mo smiled. "That's enough. You ordered all my favorites, Mrs. Qin." Yihuan knew his bad taste and kept calling her Mrs. Qin. She pretended not to know and ignored him. She picked up the aperitif and took a sip unconsciously. It was spicy. Yihuan's face scrunched up, and she looked pitiful. Qin Mo held back his laughter and pushed the dessert in front of him towards her. "Eat something sweet to calm yourself down." With a bitter face, Yihuan ate a little and felt a little better. Then, she pushed her aperitif to him. "Drink it." Qin Mo smiled and drank the wine in his glass. He then looked at Yihuan. "You're already a grown-up. Can't you drink some aperitif?" Yihuan had only taken a sip, and her face had indeed turned red. She looked very cute. Qin Mo looked at her as he slowly drank his aperitif. Yihuan's face turned even redder. At this time, the waiter began to serve the dishes. They were served very quickly, and the appetizers and main dishes were served almost at the same time. Qin Mo's voice was very gentle. "Try the foie gras here. It tastes very good." Yihuan nodded and took a small bite. It was indeed delicious. Yihuan's face was filled with satisfaction and joy. And Qin Mo looked at her satisfied look. His heart is more satisfied than her. He forked a mouthful of apple and sent it to her lips. "Have another bite of apple." Although Yihuan felt a little mushy, she still took it. The apple was crispy and fragrant. After eating a piece, she felt that it was very delicious. She looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo smiled and forked another small piece for her. She still felt that it was very delicious, and before she knew it, he had finished feeding her. Afterward, he was a little embarrassed. "Eat some." Qin Mo smiled and helped her cut the steak before starting to eat. In fact, Yihuan was used to being independent. She wasn't too keen on being taken care of by a man like this. However, it felt good to be taken care of by a handsome man like Qin Mo. Even the women in the restaurant were secretly envious. Yihuan wasn't a vain girl, but at this moment, she felt very good. But very quickly, she felt bad, because she knew the person sitting at the opposite table. It was none other than Su Ilio, who had just been banned. Chapter 4494. Yihuan's eyes dimmed. She lowered her head and drank the pumpkin and chestnut soup in silence. Qin Mo sensed that something was wrong with her. He looked in the direction she was looking at and said calmly, "You're not happy to see it?" "No." Yihuan took small sips and said in a low voice, "B City is my home too. I can't control where she wants to eat." Qin Mo looked at her and reached out to touch her hair. He smiled and said, "Not bad. It feels like you've finally grown up, my little girl." Yihuan slapped his hand away. "Who's your little girl?" "I'm not." Qin Mo's voice was gentle. "Weren't you raised by my family? You'll be my wife when you grow up. What do they call that in ancient times?" He was getting more and more frivolous. Yihuan couldn't take it anymore. "I'm going to the washroom." Chinemo smiled and let her go. More importantly, Huan had eaten quite a lot. She didn't have a big appetite, and Chinemo thought she was almost full. Huan went to the washroom. When she came out to wash her hands, she saw Su Ilio. Huan looked outside and then turned on the tap to wash his hands. Su Ilio was no longer in a mess and was dressed nicely. After all, her family still had a career and she still had a lot of glamour. However, she couldn't become famous even if she wanted to. When Huan was washing her hands, she stood beside her and said softly, "Huan, don't you feel guilty around Chinemo?" Huan's hand paused for a moment. Then she asked in amusement, "Why would I feel guilty? Am I the mistress or something?" After she said that, she met Su Ilio's gaze in the mirror. Su Ilio flinched and smirked coldly. "Don't think that you can stay in this position. If you can't give birth to a boy, you'll still be abandoned by the Qin family." Huan looked down and smiled. "Then, Miss Su, you can work hard and give birth to a child of the Qin family. Let's see if you can marry into the Qin family." There was obvious mockery in her words. Su Ilio couldn't do anything even if she wanted to. Huan smiled faintly, turned off the water, and dried her hands slowly. Then, she continued, "Miss Su, even if you give birth to Qinmo's child, as long as I'm not willing, you'll never be able to marry into the Qin family. Do you believe me?" Su Ilio was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Huan smiled and walked toward the door. By the door, Chinemo was leaning against it, as if he had been standing there for a long time. Huan was stunned. He smiled and said, "Mrs. Qin seems to be getting more and more confident." She bit her lip. Chinemo smiled again. "This is a good thing." Then, without looking at Su Ilio, she grabbed Huan's hand and left. Returning to his seat, he helped Huan put on her coat and left with her clothes. Of course, it was Huan who did it. President Qin enjoyed this moment very much. On the way back, they sat in the car together. Huan didn't say a word. Chinemo smiled. "Are you angry?" Huan tilted her head and looked at him. "Are you angry with me or Su Ilio?" He pinched her cheeks with both hands. "How dare you say that about Mrs. Qin? What did you say before? You want me to have a child with another woman? Huh?" Chapter 4495. Fortunately, he felt sorry for her and quickly let go of her. Then he warned, "Don't say such things in the future, got it?" Huan wanted to say something, but she saw that he didn't look well. Only then did she realize that he was actually angry. He was angry that she pushed him to someone else. She said in a low voice, "Are you angry? What do you think?" Chinemo glanced at her. Both of them held the steering wheel, but they didn't start the car immediately. He seemed to be willing to chat with her in the car for a while. Huan knew what he was thinking, so she didn't say anything and just lowered her head to play with her fingers. Chinemo also lowered his head and looked at her silently. After a while, his voice was hoarse and a little gentle. "Do you know what you did wrong?" "I don't know." She glanced at him and then looked out of the car window. Chinemo sighed. "You." He reached out and pinched her face. "I'll teach you a lesson when we get home." She wasn't afraid of him. She made a face at him, which made Chinemo laugh happily. His voice was low and hoarse. "Huan, you haven't been like this for a long time." It was like going back to high school. And she was just a little junior high school student, and he liked Huan very much. She was small and cute, just like she was now. Chinemo drove. After a while, Huan realized that this wasn't the way back to the villa, so she asked him, "Where are we going?" Chinemo smiled. "It's still early. Let's go to the hot spring." Huan glanced at him and didn't say anything. But an hour later, she found out that Chinemo had booked a hot spring villa and was going to spend the night there. Huan felt that it wasn't a good idea to stay here during the new year, and Huan was still at home. Chinemo parked the car and looked at her sideways. "Didn't you say that you were going to please me and beg me? Instead, you want me to have a child with another woman?" Huan sat down. "Didn't you want to give her the copyright or something? That's just a publicity stunt. Besides, the copyright is still in my hands." Chinemo smiled and unbuckled his seatbelt. He took her dress and let her get out of the car. After getting out of the car, Huan dawdled behind him, looking very unhappy. Chinemo smiled and walked in front. Then, He used his fingerprint to open the door of the villa. Iwan glared at him. You bought it. That's right, Qin Mo admitted shamelessly. In the future, we can come here occasionally. Iwan was speechless. She looked at him for a long time before she said in a low voice, What a waste. As long as I'm with you, it's not a waste, he said, turning on the light in the room to let Iwan in. The interior decoration was very luxurious. Qin Mo must have asked someone to decorate it. Moreover, it was in Iwan's favorite style. It was beautiful. Indoors, it was very warm, probably because of the hot spring. As soon as she entered, Iwan took off her coat. Qin Mo took it from her and took off his own coat and sweater. He poured her a cup of hot water and went to check out the hot spring room. Iwan sat down and drank water as she looked at the one-story villa. It looked like the style of a hotel villa in Lijiang. Apart from the main house, there was a large parking lot and a courtyard full of green plants. As Iwan was looking around, Qin Mo walked over. The water is just right. Let's go over. Iwan immediately turned around and looked at him. His heart suddenly started pounding, and it was beating a little faster than usual. Chapter 4496. They had been husband and wife for many years. Although they didn't spend much time together, they had done everything they should. But they had never soaked in the hot spring together. Actually, they hadn't even taken a bath together. So Iwan was a little nervous. But Qin Mo didn't seem to notice her nervousness. Seeing that she wasn't moving, he immediately walked over and frowned. What's wrong? Iwan shook her head. Nothing. Qin Mo picked her up, and she was a little scared. She quickly put her arms around his neck. Qin Mo, you look a little absent-minded. He smiled and whispered as he walked. Are you nervous, Mrs. Qin? Iwan was so angry that she punched his shoulder and glared at him. He was doing it on purpose. He knew it from the start. Qin Mo was still smiling. Are you feeling better now? Iwan was still staring at him. Qin Mo couldn't help but laugh. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Be good. Oh yes, you can think about how to please me when you soak in the hot spring. I don't want to please you. Iwan bit her lip. Qin Mo chuckled and touched her with the tip of his nose. His voice was very low. You don't want to go home, huh? Iwan's lips trembled slightly, and her eyes were lowered. She was as beautiful as a fawn and was indescribably adorable. Qin Mo couldn't help but reach out and touch the tip of her nose. Iwan had a few small freckles on her little nose. She was very cute. Not only did she not look old, but she also looked more girlish. Coupled with her misty eyes, she was really beautiful. But Qin Mo was very restrained, at least when they were soaking in a hot spring. He also took care of her carefully. Because Iwan's health wasn't good, he was afraid that she would faint. But that didn't include after the hot spring. After the bath, Qin Mo casually put on a bathrobe. Iwan was about to put on a bathrobe too, but Qin Mo took the new dress over. Wear this. Iwan frowned. I'm going to sleep soon. President Qin chuckled. I'm wearing this because I'm going to bed. Iwan was a little slow. After a while, she whispered, Qin Mo, you're so bad. Mr. Qin chuckled hoarsely. How am I bad? As he spoke, he picked up the black dress and helped her put it on. Then he gently fastened the belt. Afterwards, Qin Mo's gaze became a little dangerous, and his ink-black pupils deepened. Iwan bit her lip and called out to Qin Mo with some fear. He hugged and kissed her, murmuring, Call me Big Brother. My mobile phone remembers to bring wonderful novels to you, brother. She looked up, and her eyes were misty. Her face was also slightly flushed due to the temperature. Qin Mo carried her and walked step by step toward the master bedroom. Iwan bit her lip and hugged his neck with her slender arms. She wanted to say something, but Qin Mo lowered his head and whispered, Didn't you say that you're going to please me? Huh? Iwan's face was a little red. She bit her lower lip again and gently rested her head on his shoulder. Later on, the price of pleasing him was wasting 280,000 yuan in one night. Early the next morning, Iwan woke up in Qin Mo's arms. When she opened her eyes, she saw his handsome face and shallow breathing. She looked at him quietly and then couldn't help but reach out to touch his face gently. Qin Mo happened to wake up at this moment. He opened his eyes and looked at her with his long and narrow eyes. Hee-Hwan's hand stopped in midair. After a long time, she said bitterly, "You're awake?" Chapter 4497. Chinmo's eyes were tinged with a smile. He looked relaxed and smiled. "I didn't want to touch you. Why aren't you moving?" Then he took her hand. "Mrs. Chin, I didn't want to touch you. Why aren't you moving?" Hee-Hwan glared at him. "Chinmo." He smiled and let her go. Then he lay flat. "Where are you going today? Aren't you going to pick up Hee-Hwan?" Hee-Hwan leaned over and put her hand on his shoulder. Maybe she was not used to it, so she shrank back a little. Chin-mo lowered his eyes and looked at her. Hee-Hwan put her hand back and said softly, "You said it last night." This time, there was a hint of interest in his eyes. He turned sideways and held on to her so that she could not escape. His voice was low and husky. "You said that you would bring Hee-Hwan back if you let me do whatever I wanted last night?" Hee-Hwan took a deep breath and bit her lip. "What do you mean by do whatever you want? He is so bad. He got everything last night, but he is still making such sarcastic remarks." Hee-Hwan lowered her eyes. "We agreed. I didn't say that I couldn't let Hee-Hwan back, but let her stay in the Chio garden for a few more days." Chin-mo said with a smile. Hee-Hwan gathered her courage and looked up at him. Chin-mo smiled. "Because I want to be alone with you. Is there a problem, Mrs. Chin?" Hee-Hwan was a little hesitant again. She didn't say anything. She just turned around and put her head on the white pillow. She drew circles on the pillow with her slender fingers. Chin-mo went over and hugged her gently. His breath was warm. "What's wrong? You don't like it or you don't want to be with me, huh?" Hee-Hwan was helpless against him. She didn't say anything and continued to draw circles on the pillow. Chin-mo looked at her and chuckled. "Hwan, you are so cute." After that, they skipped breakfast and went straight to lunch in the afternoon. Chin-mo took Hee-Hwan back to the villa. She thought she could rest, but Chin-mo took her place and chose a more formal outfit. He also changed his jacket into a coat. Chin-mo helped her button up her coat. Seeing that he had also changed into a formal handmade suit, Hee-Hwan couldn't help but ask, "Where are we going?" "Concert." Chin-mo deliberately asked her in surprise. "You don't know about Kong Chiao's concert?" This could be considered as Kong Chiao's temporary departure from the music industry. Chin-mo had received the invitation a month ago. In fact, he knew that Hee-Hwan should have been invited as well, but she was not in the studio and was ill, so her assistant probably ignored it. So, she was surprised. After a while, she asked softly, "Kong Chiao?" "Yeah, there will be one on the 1st and 5th day of the Lunar New Year, but I heard that there will be a surprise today." Chin-mo's fingers gently rubbed Hee-Hwan's little head. "He will be playing the theme song of Twin coming night. Don't you want to hear it?" "My mobile phone remembers to bring wonderful novels to you, Hee-Hwan widened his eyes, which were slightly misty. Chin-mo showed her the invitation, and she saw the organizers and partners of the concert. They were all entertainment companies. Hee-Hwan looked at Chin-mo and didn't say a word for a long time. "Wedding gift, hmm?" Chin-mo chuckled. Hee-Hwan was in a daze again. After a long time, she whispered, "Chin-mo, are you touched?" He smiled again and adjusted her coat for her. "Okay, let's go." Hee-Hwan's eyes were still misty, and she didn't move when he pulled her away. Chin-mo just stood there and chuckled. "What's wrong?" Chapter 4498. Hee-Hwan pursed her lips and whispered with some difficulty. "Chin-mo." She didn't say the rest of her words and just kept looking at him. Chin-mo still looked at her with a smile and waited patiently for her to continue. Hee-Hwan pursed her lips and looked at him with some difficulty. Finally, she said in a low voice, "Chin-mo, let's give it a try." After saying that, she raised her head and looked at him very seriously. At that moment, Hee-Hwan's eyes seemed to be filled with countless stars. Chin-mo stared at her eyes for a long time. Suddenly, he covered her eyes and pulled her into his arms. Because her eyes were so beautiful that he didn't dare to look at them directly. Faced with Chin-mo's sudden mood, Hee-Hwan was a little surprised and a little shy. She leaned into his arms. Her soft and tender skin leaned against the woolen cloth of his suit. She could vaguely feel his body temperature. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. She could feel his heartbeat and Chin-mo's emotions at that moment. Huan felt a surge of emotions in her heart. She quietly hugged Chinmo's waist and hugged him very tightly. It seemed that there was no moment when she liked him so much. When they weren't too young, and also when Chinmo was at his best and most mature and charming age. Later, he kissed her for a long time. As expected, they were late for the concert. When the car stopped in the parking lot of the concert hall, Huan raised her hand to look at the time. "It'll be rude if we're late. Chinmo, why don't we not go?" Chinmo looked at her and smiled. "We'll go through the VIP entrance and sit at the back." Huan looked at him. He knew what she wanted to ask, so he smiled. "The back is very convenient." Huan blushed and tilted her head to look at him. Chinmo held her hand and got out of the car first. He went around to open the door for her. Huan got out of the car and let him hold her. She wasn't used to it before, but this time, she seemed to be very used to it. Walking side by side in the long corridor, it felt like they were walking for a lifetime. When Huan said that, Chinmo said in a hoarse voice, "We will keep going." Then, he tilted his head. "Do you have a better choice?" Huan gently pursed her lips, and finally, she smiled faintly. She rested her head on his shoulder. It was not a very passionate gesture, but it was a very intimate one. Chinmo tilted his head and looked at her. Then, he smiled slightly and pressed his face against hers. "Huan, we don't look like an old married couple. In the future, when we're 70 or 80 years old, we will still be like this, an old man and an old woman." "Probably." Huan lowered her eyes and smiled. "Chinmo, won't you get sick of it?" Since he was late, Chinmo didn't care about the extra time. He stopped and looked at her seriously. After a long time, he shook his head. "No, how can I get sick of it?" His voice sounded like a sigh. Then, he reached out and touched her face gently. "Huan, I'm already 40. I've given you my best time as a man." Huan wanted to say something. Her lips moved, and she finally said, "What do you mean by a man's best time?" "You're so shameless." He laughed. "Then do you like it when I'm shameless, huh? Do you like how shameless I was last night?" Chapter 44:99. Huan's face blushed again. She looked up at him and called his name. Chinmo's fingers touched her face gently. "All right, let's go in." Huan glanced at him again, and then her hand moved down to hold Chinmo's hand gently. Chinmo's hand moved a little, and then his gaze fell on her face. He was a little surprised and a little surprised. He looked straight at her, and then the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. His fingers slowly tightened, and he held her hand gently in his palm. Huan raised her head and stared at him. Chinmo's voice was hoarse. "Huan, it seems like I don't have to be jealous of anyone anymore." He had finally gotten what he had been longing for and pursuing. At this moment, he really wanted to hug her, to hold her in his arms and comfort her, but time didn't allow it. His voice was low and hoarse. "If we don't go in now, it's going to be over. So let's go in now." Huan smiled. Chinmo held her hand and went in through the VIP passage. After entering, they sat in the last row. Conchiao was playing a famous song. It was a sad and sorrowful song, and the female audience was tearing up. Even Huan, who had a heart of stone, couldn't help but stare at the stage without blinking. After a while, Chinmo whispered in her ear, "Why are you crying?" "Ah," Huan said, and then reached out to touch her face. It was dry, and there were no tears. She was so angry that she glared at Chinmo, and he smiled indulgently. Then, he held her hand. Huan naturally leaned on his shoulder, and she said softly, "This is very rude. Didn't I say that we're at the end?" He smiled and pulled her little head. "Look at the stage. It's going to be nightfall soon. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you that when Yuan will be on the same stage." Huan's eyes widened. "Really? Yimubai doesn't mind?" "What's the use of minding?" President Qin's voice was a little dissatisfied. "Just like how I mind that you used Rongyu's script, made a drama, and poached Kong Qiao." As he said that, he bit her cheek unwillingly. "You've broken my heart into pieces." Huan let out a soft cry of pain and covered her face. She looked at him with an indescribable gaze. She looked very cute, so Chinmo took a few more bites. Huan felt that he was really rude. In the concert hall, probably knowing what she was thinking, Chinamo reached out to hug her and said in a husky voice, "We are in love, so everything that is unreasonable is reasonable. You're twisting words and forcing logic." Huan glared at him. You wouldn't say that if you were photographed. In fact, they were photographed by someone around them. At the moment when Mo bit Huan, it was taken and uploaded to Weibo. Unfortunately, it was a big influencer, and it was reposted by several influencers. That night, the trending topic became hashtag the beauty of Mrs. President Qin. In the photo, Huan was wearing a black wool dress with a Chanel bead necklace. Her black hair was spread over her shoulders, and her small face looked especially fair and delicate under the dim lighting. It was as if she had come out of a painting. When Mo kissed her, she opened her eyes wide and looked at Mo innocently. Her expression was damn seductive. Chapter 4500. When Mo kissed her, her eyes widened and she looked at Mo innocently. Her expression was damn seductive. Moreover, when her face was next to Mo's, it seemed especially small. That photo spread like wildfire. It immediately became a hot topic, reaching over 7 million. Weibo's programmers were already working overtime, breaking down and crying. The person in question had no idea. She looked at Mo. Mo's fingers gently touched her face. Isn't it normal? That scene was captured again. The next trending topic was hashtag how long is President Qin's finger? The internet celebrities reposted it again, and in the end, they shifted their attention to other aspects. It made people not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Huan and Mo did not know. Just as Mo had said, in love, anything that was unreasonable became reasonable. No one checked their phones that night. Even the employees of King Entertainment saw the trending topic on New Year's Eve. However, President Qin was in love. No one dared to disturb him. Hence, President Qin and his wife stayed on Weibo for the entire night. Their popularity overshadowed Kong Xiao's concert. Huan had no idea. Just as she and Mo were getting intimate, Kong Xiao's concert was coming to an end. The finale was a duet between him and Wen Yuan. Night fell. Wen Yuan sat in front of the piano in a long black dress, elegant and gentle. Kong Xiao stood beside her, watching her play the prelude. Wen Yuan looked up at him and smiled. Kong Xiao smiled back warmly. As they looked at each other, Yimu Bai, who was in the audience, was gritting his teeth. That night, Wen Yuan and Kong Xiao also made it to the trending topic hashtag Kong Xiao and Wen Yuan are a good match. What kind of beauty was that? However, no matter what, it did not overshadow Mo and Huan's trending topic. It was a solid first place, and the popularity did not drop for the entire night. The main reason was that Huan, who was in her early 30s, was too girlish. It was too surprising. Photos of Huan since she was young were also dug out. It was amazing. Huan was back. It should be the power of love. Moreover, her appearance was not inferior to that of the A-list big stars and the popular small stars. It was just that she looked more pampered. At this time, Kong Xiao and Wen Yuan's cooperation continued. This was also the first time Kong Xiao had put her heart into it in recent years. The scene was extremely beautiful. It was also super nice, the kind that could make one's ears pregnant. Huan was fascinated. She held Mo's hand and whispered, "Concho played really well. Mo, don't you think this is the best you've done in years?" Mo turned his head and looked at her. There was a small cluster of flames in his eyes, and his voice was a little dangerous as he lowered it. "Do you often go to his concerts?" No matter how stupid Huan was, she could still hear the hint of jealousy in his words. She bit her lower lip and said, "Of course I do. Sometimes, when I happen to be in the same city, I'll go and listen to them." When she spoke, it was rare for her to sound like this. Mo just stared at her. Huan put her face on his arm and said coquettishly, "You're not angry about this, are you? What do you think?" Mo said in a low voice. His gaze softened a little as he rubbed her little head. "You actually admire other men." His tone was a little displeased. Huan looked up at him and suddenly said, "Mo, you're so cute." Mo lowered his head. Cute. Mrs. Cheen, are you sure? Do you think I was cute last night? Which part of me was cute? What did I do that made you think I was cute? Iwan's face suddenly turned red again. Fortunately, it was not visible in the dim light. Chapter 45:01. Qin and Mo chuckled and looked at Kong Xiao and Wen Yuan on the stage. Kong Xiao used to be an artist under King Entertainment, so he knew a little about her private life. She had liked Wen Yuan for many years, but Wen Yuan had lost his life because of Yimu Bai. Fate was something that couldn't be lacking. At this time, the concert was over. Wen Yuan and Kong Xiao thanked the audience and stood side by side. Yimu Bai was stimulated by the handsome man and the beautiful woman. Qin and Mo smiled and left with He Huan. Back in the car, He Huan was still immersed in the song Coming Night. She hugged Qin Mo's arm and said, Qin and Mo, don't you think Wen Yuan and Kong Xiao are really a good match? Their names are also a good match. Qin and Mo was fastening his seatbelt. As he fastened it, he looked at her quietly and chuckled. What are you smiling at? He Huan bit her lip and asked. Qin and Mo reached out and pulled her hair. I'll believe you if you say it in front of Yimu Bai. He Huan widened her eyes and looked at him in disbelief. Qin and Mo, you're so bad. What's wrong with it? Qin and Mo chuckled softly. Tell me all, huh? He Huan bit her lip. You're even worse now? He smiled happily, and then his eyes became very gentle. Let's go back to the apartment, okay? I'll play the guqin for you. He Huan stared at him for a while and then asked, You know how to play the guqin? He pinched her cheek again. I know a lot. Mrs. Qin, you can slowly find out in the future. He Huan bit her lip. I'm 32. I'm not Mrs. Qin. You look so young. Qin Mo's voice was a little hoarse. You must have no idea how. He didn't continue. He Huan stared at him blankly. More what? Qin Mo's gaze was unbelievably gentle. Then, he stared at her without saying a word. He Huan glanced at him. Keep me guessing. Qin and Mo smiled, his slender fingers on the steering wheel, and looked at her sideways. Let's go home. The white Mulsanne started up slowly. As he drove, He Huan was scrolling through her phone in boredom. Then, she saw her and Qin Mo's trending topic. Surprised, He Huan opened her eyes wide. Qin and Mo glanced at her, then smiled and asked her, What are you looking at? He Huan bit her lip. Nothing. Oh. Qin and Mo smiled and continued driving. He stopped at a red light and turned his head to look at He Huan. She was still looking at her phone with her eyes wide open, which made her look inexplicably cute. She seemed to be a little different recently. Qin and Mo didn't disturb her. He just lit a cigarette and rolled down the window. He smoked while waiting for the red light to turn. It was a nice pose. However, he only smoked one to satisfy his craving. When they arrived at the apartment building, he turned off the engine and let He Huan sit in the car while he got out to smoke 2 cigarettes. After waiting for a while, He Huan couldn't help but roll down the window and put her face on the window to look at Qin and Mo. In the dark and cold night, he didn't wear a jacket and just stood there smoking. He Huan couldn't help but ask him, Qin and Mo, aren't you cold? He stood there with only a sweater on his slender body. He took a puff of the cigarette and walked over. I'll be fine after this one. Chapter 45:02. He stood there, wearing only a sweater on his slender body. He pinched the cigarette, but between his fingers, and took a puff before walking over. I'll be fine after smoking this one. You're really addicted to smoking. He Huan couldn't help but complain. Can't you smoke less? Qin and Mo held the door with one hand and smiled. Working hard to update. Please refresh later. This chapter is working hard to update. Please refresh later to visit Chichi // Hey handsome guys and beautiful girls visiting us on mobile. Please register as a member first. Register as a member of this site and use the bookmark function for easier reading. If this chapter is about the author asking for votes, please skip to the next chapter. Please bookmark this page so that you can read it later. Otherwise, you won't be able to find this chapter. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations Tang Wu Wei, Urban Romance. Abstinent Young Masterly Flirting. Abstinence Young Masterly Explode the Sky. Content Summary. No, you're too big. What's too big? Hubby, your thick thighs. Yun Yin was engaged to the most powerful man in the empire. People envied her for marrying Li Yuting, saying that her man had the most powerful backing and the thickest golden thigh. However, one morning, Yun Yin posted on Weibo as Mrs. Li, GM Li, we are divorced. Please respect yourself. In less than a minute, Li Yuting, the head of the Li Corporation, replied with a message. Honey, it's getting cold. Let's talk about our private affairs in bed. Be good and give me your phone. Countless netizens were seething and said, kick over this bowl of dog food. We're not eating it. Abstinence young masterly, explode the sky. Forwarding address, /HTML, /111, /111545 / HTML, /111 /111545 content reading. Chapter 1. 2 months of pregnancy diagnosis. Secretary Yun. This is my 2-month pregnancy diagnosis. The child is CEO Li's. A report suddenly fell from the sky and landed right in front of Yun Yin. Yun Yin raised her head and saw a delicate, yet arrogant face. You are? Yun Yin frowned. The woman looked down at her proudly. I'm President Li's girlfriend, Li Fei. Oh, Yun Yin remembered. She was wondering why this woman's face looked so familiar. 2 months ago, a paparazzi published a gossip about a new singer, Li Fei and Li Yuting spending a romantic night together in a hotel. The news only appeared on the internet for less than an hour before it was completely erased by the public relations department of the Li Group in a thunderous manner. She glanced at the pregnancy diagnosis and calculated the time. It matched up with the scandal from 2 months ago. As if knowing what she was thinking, Li Fei rubbed her belly and smiled. You guessed right. It was 2 months ago when I was pregnant with President Li's child. Yin Yin raised an eyebrow. Miss Li, I'm not the one who made you pregnant. What's the point of you looking for me? She choked on her words. I've looked into you. You're the woman who has been by CEO Li's side the longest. I don't believe you two aren't related. This pregnancy report is to tell you that if you know what's good for you, you should keep your distance from CEO Li. Otherwise, if I become Mrs. Li, you'll be the first one I treat. Yin Yin was interested. Since you're CEO Li's girlfriend, do you know what kind of woman he hates the most? Li Fei was stunned and asked, what kind of woman? A woman who has plastic surgery. You have plastic surgery. Li Fei was furious. Miss Li, you know best whether I have plastic surgery or not. Under Li Fei's angry gaze, Yin Yin pushed away the chair and stood up. She said generously, however, I will hand this pregnancy report to CEO Li on your behalf. I hope that Miss Li can become Mrs. Li soon. After that, she ignored Li Fei's embarrassed expression and turned to leave. As soon as she got out of the elevator, Yin Yin saw the secretaries standing in a row. Linda waved at her. Yin Yin, come here. Yin Yin immediately went over. What's wrong? Assistant Shun just called and said that CEO Li will be here soon. You should be in the elevator now. Another secretary, Andy, said excitedly, CEO Li will be away for almost a month. We should welcome him well. As he said that, he showed off his 36D breasts. Yun Yin quietly looked away. The elevator door opened with a ding sound. The man who walked out of the elevator was wearing a black, custom-made suit. His slender body was perfectly wrapped in well-tailored clothes. His deep, chiseled face, which usually showed a sense of indifference and alienation, was now faintly carrying suppressed anger. There weren't many people in this world who could make CEO Li so angry. Just as Yin Yin was trying to figure out what was going on, Li Yuting suddenly walked towards her. Yin Yin suddenly had a bad feeling. Usually, in the company, in front of outsiders, he never acted intimately with her. He didn't even look at her. In his eyes, she was like air. Therefore, in the entire company, only a few people knew that she was a married woman. And no one knew that she was Mrs. Li, Abstinence Young Master Li. Forwarding address, /HTML, /111 /111545 /HTML, /111 /111545 You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.